Awesome. Thank you so much for that again. So welcome everyone. This is the September 2022 Jupyter Community Call. I'm so excited to have you all here. My name is Isabella and I will be your host today. Before we start, there's a few things I always have to say. So one, this is a Jupyter community event like any other Jupyter space. We are held to the code of conduct. That does include me. If you need to review that, you can find it at any time at jupyter.org/conduct. So that's that. 2, you know this call is being recorded, but whatever that means to you, just be aware. And 3, correct me if I say your name wrong. I'm trying to be better about this, but I can't get better and respect you if I don't know. So great. Those are my 3 things. If you are new to this call, what this is kind of a big cross sub-community, right? There's a lot of sub-communities within Jupyter. It's our meeting where we all show up, share, kind of like a show and tell, like this is my favorite thing, this is this. So it's one of my favorite calls. I'm really happy you're all here today. And what we are going to be doing is following the agenda that I linked earlier. Please sign in if you feel so inclined. And that means we're going to start with the short reports, which are items without discussion needs. And then we'll move into the main agenda items. I'll be taking some notes and keeping like if we link things in the chat, but other than that, you're also welcome to take notes as you wish. So without further ado, hooray, let's get started. I am always so happy to have things on the agenda. So we'll start with the short reports, celebrations, and shout outs. We have a shout out for Jupyter Light. I don't know who's taking that.
It doesn't look like any of the usual suspects are on here, are there?
Yeah, I was going to actually check the calendar event and see if I messed something up, but I always try and join from the calendar event in case I have a weird link somewhere. So let me check.
I didn't write that, but Jupyter Light is awesome.
Yeah, and I know Nick, and at least when I've talked to Nick, he's been working on widget support for a while and is really excited about it. So seems like a big deal, especially after the 8.0 version or 0.8 version coming out. You know, it seems like widgets are getting some new life now.
Yeah, so iPadWidgets 8 just came out. That's right. For people who aren't familiar with Jupyter Light, it is a version of Jupyter Lab and a version of Jupyter Notebook that run entirely in your browser. So the kernel that you use runs in the browser, and there's a few kernels that we support. There's a JavaScript one, which is a natural fit for the browser, but there's also a WebAssembly Python one that comes with a bunch of the libraries you're already used to. And so for purposes that are not compute intensive, like if you're teaching a class or if you are just using it as a scratchpad or something, it can be hosted on plain old static server. It can be sitting on your machine and you just double click an HTML file even, but I don't think we're shipping it that way right now. And it requires no particular backend, and it is a miracle of modern different threads coming together, right? Because these are languages that were not intended to all run in the browser, but because of LLVM and because of WebAssembly, you can now target the compilation of many, many programming languages to be WebAssembly and to run in the browser, and it's cool. So if you go to try.jupyter.org and you try Jupyter Lab, you're actually trying the Jupyter Light version that isn't hitting any backend services or running Python in the backend.
Yeah, that was a great explanation.
I've gotten, slowly I've gotten over the magic. The one thing I can't get over is how RTC works with Jupyter Light. That's just the collaborative flag with Jupyter Light is just like game-changing future.
Yeah, RTC being real-time collaboration, if anyone needs that.
Yeah, so that is itself pretty magical. There's a concept called WebRTC where you can treat different people hitting a web page via the browser as peers on an ad hoc network where they communicate with each other and they send patches to files that they've modified. So say you type the letter A inside a notebook, it will generate a patch saying in this notebook in cell 5, somebody typed an A at this location, and everyone else will receive those patches and reconcile them to show the same notebook. And it can all happen again without the intermediation of a backend server. It's pretty wild.
Great. And so can I just check with this release then? Support for IPy widgets 8 is a big deal, right? Because that wasn't supported because we've been able to pull a lot of things into Jupyter Lite, but this is a pretty popular one to be bringing in. So I'm glad this was left here, even if we don't know who left it, because that is a great announcement to have.
I have a quick question about Jupyter Lite. Would it be possible for me to like connect the kernel to a let's say a kernel running on my remote virtual machine or computing cluster? Because the way I see it is like it could be reducing the time to load it in the front end, and also could be like improving the user experience a lot.
So I don't think so, but I think there's versions of remote kernel functionality in lab itself that might allow you to do this, like a remote kernel basically that allows you to do this. But as far as reducing the load time, it's actually kind of it's heavyweight in the browser, because if you think about what it's actually doing is it's hosting multiple virtual machines, one to do the Python work, one that was already there doing the JavaScript and whatever other languages are compiled. So loading Jupyter Lite, despite the name, is not actually lightweight. It's Jupyter Lite because it doesn't have a backend server, but actually you end up downloading a few megabytes of code and bytecode to run inside your browser. So the load time for it is not faster. It's just that the requirements of your machine are lower.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, any other questions or discussion for Jupyter Lite? Okay. We can always return to that. Was anyone so inspired for their own short report shout out? I'll be quiet for a few seconds to let you decide. Okay, great. No, that's, I love getting this news. It's a good thing. I almost feel like we should have the short reports like somewhere being like, hey, these are something someone decided to tell the whole community. It feels like there's a cool shout out there of itself. But yeah, with that, we're going to move on to the main agenda items. As we talked a little before this call, right now we have a main one, so we have plenty of time. If someone's inspired to do something after, ask questions, share things, that's totally open. So we will see. But as we are getting started, I think this is IPyVisu's story.
Yeah, that would be it.
Yay. Hello, take it away.
Hey, Isabella. Thank you. And hey, everyone. I'm glad you're having me. This is the first time I've joined the community call. And actually, I just realized there is such a community around Jupyter that's so easy to join. So thank you very much for having me. And yeah, I plan to give you a quick intro of our new tool that we recently built and released for Jupyter Notebook and actually other notebooks that utilize Jupyter's capabilities, and it also runs in Jupyter Lite as well. So it shouldn't take more than 5-10 minutes. And I'm going to share my screen since what I'm going to show you is visual. I will use Zoom's opportunity to optimize for video, which means that you're going to be completely gone from my screen and I'm going to speak to it. So if you don't hear me or anything like that, just tell me. I can at least hear you. So basically, we are an early stage startup in Budapest, Hungary, called Vizu. And well, for whatever reasons that we don't have time for now, we built a generic data visualization engine that generates all the different types of charts and transforms. So like animates between these charts that are described on its interface pretty nicely, as you can see. And we were looking for different use cases for this technology. So obviously the storytelling use case is really strong. Like for example, these are just examples of 4 charts showing the same data, but you don't know the connection right away. Whereas when we just connect them via animation, everything becomes really like obvious for the audience. And there are actually multiple use cases we already identified. We feel that really it's like the animation, it's like turning these static images to sort of movies. You can show the components of a composite index or composite chart. You can show changes over time, like with the racing bar charts that has been very popular recently. And basically you can turn a single chart into a story itself just by showing different components and showing the same data from different angles to let the audience in. So we identified a problem that as a startup we wanted to focus on, which is those of the data scientists that need to deliver insights to business stakeholders. I'm not going to read out what's on the slide, but basically it seemed to be like really time consuming from the data scientist perspective and important from the business perspective, whereas still it seems like business owners still struggle to make sense of these. Actually, we just did the research on via LinkedIn poll, and more than 700 people voted and said that like more than 2/3 of data scientists have to present something to business stakeholders at least once a month. So it's a general thing. We built our technology in an open source way. Our engine is in C++, and we, with WebAssembly, we built a JavaScript library that's released for web developers in September a year ago. And then this March, we released the notebook integration for data scientists. And we also added some new extension that I'm going to show you. That's IPyVisu story, basically. And we managed to, like, because of this whole embeddable approach, data IPyVisu and IPyVisu Story are all available in all these platforms that you can see the logos of on the screen. So, but without further ado, let me show you how this thing works, because I think it makes much more sense. You can install it via pip. It works nicely together with pandas. We're just going to load, I mean, it's already installed here, so I'm not going to waste time with that. This is my machine, and it's a vanilla Jupyter notebook. I just hacked the CSS a little bit so that the output appears on the right side, so that you can see the code and the output on the next, like, side by side. The data frame we're using, it's from an imaginary company that has some regions, some products, some sales and revenue data. And first we're going to build the first chart with IPyVisu. We set the height and the width, and we add the filter. So we added the whole data frame, and we just tell IPyVisu to only show the records where the product is shoes. And we just set the chart up by adding this data series to the X and the Y axis and tell it what should be on the label and what it should be colored by. And we add the title of the chart here. And as you can see, we call the chart animate method here. And when we call that again, and basically I'm just changing the filter here to include handbags as well, then IPyVisu will just animate between these states. So, you know, it's really like straightforward, which just happened that we added the handbags. I'm going to do the same in the next phase, adding everything but accessories, meaning gloves appear. And then at the final stage of just constructing this chart, we added every product here. And now, so like for one thing that we can do here is to switch from the sales to the revenue, which is just by switching the revenue series on the y-axis, also on the label. And by that, the animation shows this transition. And so you can see that obviously there are big differences in the number of items sold and the revenue that they generated. And you can also, but just by calling the animate method twice in this case, change the orientation of the chart and aggregate the revenue by product. And again, for the viewer, it's pretty obvious. So this was the version that we released this March, and actually the feedback we got from people using Jupyter Notebook was that this generic logic of constructing the chart can be a little hard to comprehend. So just adding series to axes and channels, such as the color channel or the label channel. People are more used to starting with a chart type like a bar chart, a stack column chart, a scatter plot, whatever. And the other thing is that this only allows one directional use. So if I call this cell again, we will end up with something really funky, and you might not know what's going on here. And so it's not so easy to use at this point. And if I can move the, yeah. So there's we try to address these concerns and work towards something that people like better. So first we introduced presets, and here I'm going to use a different CSV that contains data about sales of different music formats in the US from 1973 to 2020. And as you can see, we just set the year so that it's a string. Otherwise, IPyVisu might comprehend it as a number, and that's not something we want. And yeah, we set the style here. There are plenty of ways you can set the style, and actually we even animate between the style settings if you want that to happen. And now we construct the chart and we call the animate method once. And now we have this stream graph that shows the sales of the different music formats like CD with this yellow thingy is the biggest, and as you can see, vinyl was pretty huge back then, and things like that. But here I still use this generic logic that has like 6 lines of code, and now you can just use the config.stream. So tell IPyVisu that you're constructing a stream graph, and then the syntax will become much more cleaner. So we will know that year is on the x-axis, revenue is on the y-axis, and we need to stack the data by the format, so the music format. So if I call this, we basically end up at the same chart that we had before. And the other thing is that we cannot really read the numbers, so the years on the x-axis. So we add a little event that will only allow the numbers to appear if they are divisible by 5. And as you can see, it already updated. You can actually hack the hell out of IPyVisu with these events. You can do whatever you want, basically, with it. And so just a couple of things that you can do that shows the power of animated charts is if you switch on the align stretch, then it will show you the percentage of shares of these formats in this example. We're just going to switch back to the center alignment for the stream graph. You can split the data being shown, meaning that you can see the components side by side and identify trends. Just like before, you can just filter it down to, like in this case, vinyl and the streaming formats, which will it's basically just zooming in on 2 of the components, and you can get back to it just the original chart just by emptying the filter. This is what my wife called when the elephants kiss. So you got back to the original chart, and also you can just switch it to a line chart again, either with the original syntax so that you can compare the trends in this way, or with the config line, which will just enable you to build a line chart a lot easier. So we addressed the first issue about the generic logic, but the one directional use case, for that we built this new extension that we released earlier this July called IPyVisu Story. This is separately, this should be installed separately. It contains things like stories, slides, and steps. And basically, it enables you to build interactive animated presentations within Jupyter Notebook. So basically, here we just set the style and add some more data into it. I'm just trying to be quick here. You create, you add the first slide and you add a step. And the step is basically what a chart that you had in IPyVisu Story. And then you set it up and you add it at this slide that you put the step into to your story. You do that again, like this time we're going to split it. It's a little really simple step, and so on and so on. So you can construct their story like slide by slide. You can have slides that contain multiple steps, like in this case, we have slide number 3 here, and then we add one step here and another here. These steps again are these very flexible charts of IPyVisu, and you will going to end up with something like this if you run this cell. This is a fully interactive animated data story here. It also has the tooltip. If you move your mouse over, it will show you the data element there. It actually shows the budget that the U.S. federal budget spent on R&D between 1955 and 2020, and you can move between the slides either with your cursor, by click of a button, or with buttons on your keyboard, or even with the clicker. As I said, you can once again see the components side by side. You can add, in this case, the defense budget, which absolutely changed, like giving you context of how much the U.S. spent on everything else throughout the years. Or you can just, you can once again see the share, or you can just, zoom in on the beginning and the end of the period, group the components of the stack chart, and then rearrange them so that you can see how these components changed over time. These are just simple examples of using IPyVisu, an IPyVisu story. You can also export this thing to an interactive HTML file that you can share with your peers. It's going to include the data. It's going to include basically the chart that everybody can run in their browser independently from the notebook. We have the whole thing open source. You can find it on GitHub. It's called IPyVisu and IPyVisu Story. And I really don't want to take more of your time without letting you ask me some questions. So thank you very much for your time, and I'd be glad to hear what you think about it.
Thank you very much for sharing. One thing I want to check before you discuss, do you have links to those projects, or is it in IPyVisu.org where I can find it?
You mean the ones that I just showed you with the music data and everything like that?
So, anything that you can share. Oh, thank you. That's wonderful.
So here's the repository link, and here's an example in an HTML format. Actually, from the repo, you'll get to some examples, some the presets that we built for IPyVisu. Actually, a step-by-step tutorial we created for the thing, and we also have a Slack channel. I personally thrive on welcoming everyone who joins and answering every question that might come up. Obviously, this is still very fresh, and we know there's a lot of there are a lot of things we could do to make it easier to use for everyone.
Yeah, that's awesome. I definitely have questions I can ask, but I think other people might. So take it away, anyone who has a question.
I was really impressed with the animations. They were very clean. I actually went into it being like, oh, I'm going to hate this because I don't like a lot of color movement, because I do get a little bit overwhelmed with those experiences. But I was really impressed with the transitions between the slides being as graceful as they are. What are you guys bringing together here? Like, it's a really cool story. But, like from a technology side, like the static plots look as good as other ones that I've seen. Is the animation and kind of the in-between steps what y'all are bringing here? It was a good story. I'm just trying to figure out, where you guys are focusing your interests.
Sure. So basically, this whole concept comes from my co-founder, who's a UX designer, and who was really frustrated by the fact that he has to learn coding to make animated, really bespoke visualizations. And he started to think about how this can be like what kind of a shortcut can be built here. And he figured out that in order to build a system that enables just basically everybody to better interact with data, it has to be like a single logic built on a single engine that can generate all the charts so that it can be animated, because animation is key keeping people's attention and just keeping the context. And so he went into a lengthy research to identify the common characteristics of all the different chart types, and also to try and come up with rules for the animations between these charts. So there's like, yeah, literally years of research behind those clean transitions that you spotted. So thanks. I will tell him you appreciated that. He'll be very happy about it. Yeah, we are actually, like, our vision is to build a graphical user interface for data, a new sort of language for data. That's a huge task, to be honest. We are happy that we have an initial version of the engine that can generate all these charts and the animated transitions, and we were able to start sharing this experience with others. And it seemed to us the data scientists are the most like the best fit as early adopters for such a thing. So that's how we ended up here.
Very cool. Thank you
For the question.
What do I'll go on if someone else is going to start talking.
I got a question about stories. If you
Uh-oh.
want me, so, you know, like one of the things I've noticed over the years is a lot of people have put effort into plotting tools, right? Because like data scientists are often dealing with more data than other people make decisions on. So we focus on like the form of the plot. But then like now when I'm delivering reports to people, you know, I'll have 3 and 4 plots in there. And if I do a selection on an axis, it effectively changes the whole text, you know, and the way that that story goes. So personally, I don't see the stories completely propelled by charts. Does like text and live rendering of text play into this sort of the, you know, Brett Victor inventing on principle kind of concepts?
We don't have anything against textual descriptions. I mean, that's absolutely, like, whatever helps people to make sense of what they're looking at, the story that they're being told, the insights that somebody else found. It's just that our approach and our specific like benefits or capabilities of our system, of our tool, lies within visualization. We'd be happy to integrate this into like, there's this startup that Tableau acquired last year called Narrative Science, and they already released it within their product that basically tries to translate what's on the chart to like a couple of sentences to describe, to help people understand what they're looking at. We are not against it at all. It's like we're trying to find the most effective, most efficient forms of communicating insights and to help people interact with data.
The storytelling's compelling. I think you've got something there. Good luck, y'all.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you. If you have some time to play with it, and you know, we are all very happy to receive candid and harsh feedback even about what we should improve on. We know it's far from perfect, and we don't want to act like it's ready or anything.
Can I ask a kind of clarifying question? So you what you showed. So
Please.
one of the things that I think I noticed, right, is what seems to be happening to me is that the different outputs of whatever the chart is, like at its different states, are then used as the keyframes for the animation. Mm-hmm. But within that, is it always kind of going like the same way that elsewhere in a notebook, that the order that you run the cells would impact it? Like, is it going to try and just tween between like whatever the last thing I run was and that, like, say I skipped the cell directly before, or does it, like, I was kind of curious how it collected those, because since we were going in order, I felt like we were seeing it very smoothly, but I was wondering how it interacted with the other cells, since each keyframe seems to be being made in a different cell.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that was with the original IPyVisu, with the IPyVisu story. So with the presentation part, you had all these states or keyframes, as you just called it, in one cell. You can actually have it in multiple cells, and then there's an order that you set. Actually, I mean, I routinely make stories like this, and when I want to rearrange something, I just copy and paste the code somewhere else within the story. And also, you might have noticed we have the go to first and go to last button, just next and first. So there's a chance for you to go not in the preset order necessarily. Also, since our tool works well with IPy widgets, and also it can be implemented in Mode and Streamlit and other like interactive frameworks. It doesn't necessarily have to be only a story with a linear path that you take the audience through, but you can build some sort of interactive explorers. We also have some examples for that, but yeah, it takes a lot of time to build such a thing next to running an early stage startup, which I wouldn't suggest for anyone to do. It's really yeah, it takes a lot on it takes its toll. I would just say. You're on mute.
Yeah, no, I was just nodding. I always like to hear the candid advice with that. Thanks. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I just find it very interesting to see how that's going out. If I can ask too, and people can either stop me from going this route or interrupt for a different question. I also just think it's really interesting, right? Like you were showing us in many cases example data and kind of just trying to showcase, right, how the animations worked, like the way that you would invoke those animations. But I also find something really interesting, right? Like when you were showing the defense budget data, there was the moment where you're like, oh, we're going to compare this using, right, the defense budget in the US is kind of the 100% so that you can compare everything directly to that. And so I believe that's what you're getting at with the storytelling, right? Is that you can show things over time, or you can show the different views, as you said at the beginning. But I almost wonder with that too, right? There's a lot of discussion I've run into on the periphery. I'm not too involved around like, right. I wonder if there's like a potential for, sorry, I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to say this.
No worries.
Like, is there ever a case where you would say it's really easy to misrepresent the data? It's kind of difficult because I know when you're making the framework that you can't necessarily control all the content that people do with it. But I'd wonder if you've
Not
run
at
into
all.
anything like that. Yeah.
You cannot control how people are using, especially an open source framework, and we don't intend to do anything like that. Lying with data, and I mean, there's like a great book from Alberto Cairo just about this topic, and there's like plenty of examples. It's fairly easy to do that. In many cases, people are just playing with the access ranges to show something that is a tiny change, to enlarge that. This is just a tiny example of such a manipulation. There's no way to do that. I think like enabling people to better understand what they're looking at and to interact with it, not just take something for granted that they just saw, but also make it really easy for them to switch from storytelling to like, okay, let me just take a closer look and play with it myself, and keep making the bar to lower and lower, bringing the bar lower and lower, that just enable people to make their own analysis, or just look at such stories with some criticism, and being able to just edit the whole thing that they got can empower, or can be some sort of a defense mechanism to this thing. I think actually JRV wants to ask something. I think because he turned on his camera and he even unmuted himself for a time, but that's just a guess.
Yeah. Hello. We talked in the past because I was actually building a template with Visu to aggregate it, to add it into NAS catalog, and I was just asking myself while I was playing about hey, how do you feel about those charts, and how do you, because you don't expressively say this is a horizontal bar chart or this is a line chart, or in the configuration you said it in your presentation. So what's your take on this, and how are you seeing this aspect of the configuration about like mentioning which kind of chart you want to see? I'm not sure I'm really clear, but tell me if I'm not.
You're absolutely clear, and this is what we try to address with the chart presets. So if I
Yeah,
can,
because this was the only kind of roadblock that I faced when I was building the templates, and I just wanted to have your
when
thoughts
was
about
that?
it.
Sorry. Yeah. When did you do that? I'm sorry, I just
I
trying
was
to.
actually building them yesterday. We talked
Really?
a few weeks ago about adding them to the NAS template catalog, and I was just playing around because I saw you were presenting today. So I'd say,
Okay.
I'm gonna put some time in there.
Yeah. So let me really quickly show you something. So if you go to ipyvisu.com and check the examples, then the first ones will be preset charts that are on the site, and these are all like constructed in the way that I think you were looking for. So here's like I clicked on the percentage column charts thumbnail, and this is so how you should modify your code. It's not just config, but config.percentage column, and you add the series this way. So it's more straightforward, and straight away what's the type of chart that you are building. So we have actually here 40 plus chart types that you can use as presets.
Yeah, you have an amazing
and
library.
and it's a lot easier now to build these kind of charts. If you click on any of the thumbnails in the preset gallery, you'll end up at an example code that I'm, at least I hope, make it really clear how it works. What are the
Yeah,
parameters of the chart type?
yeah. So basically, it will not be a you will not declare the chart as you will not really name it, but you will enable the way the chart is displayed through this configuration that you showed, right?
You actually name it. So like we use now percentage column. That's the name, and you're building a percentage column chart, or you're
Oh, okay,
building
got
a
it.
scatter plot, config.scatter, and then it has certain parameters that are necessary to build a scatter plot. So we are getting closer to that. Maybe just give it some. If you played with it, if you have some more time and check out the presets, I'll be happy to continue our discussion to understand if there's still something missing. Be unclear for me at this point.
No, that's all good. Yeah,
what you're looking
I will be
for.
happy to. No, I will let you know. Thank you so much for the
Great.
answer. Very clear.
Yes.
Thank you. It's awesome what you've built.
Thank you. Thanks for the question.
Thanks.
Peter, I don't know if you're familiar with a HoloViz project.
I've heard of them briefly. I heard about them, but
it's not too much work to build a visualization backend for HoloViews. They have an API, an extension API. But the nice thing about HoloViews and HoloViz is that it sort of generalizes your data ingest and then allows you to, take a pandas data frame or a Dask data frame or, a Modin data frame and like move that into your visualization real fast. But there's like, to me, this looks like Altair with like a specification, or like an Altair Vega with a specification for animations in the middle. And when you build an HV plot or a HoloViews visualization backend, it actually turns your pandas data frame into a Fluent API for visualization too. So you'd actually get an alternative API for writing and composing your visualizations the way that you are. So you can say something like df.plot, group this thing, filter this thing, show this thing, and then you can feed that into your system and have these really beautiful visualizations coming out.
Yeah, actually, now that you tell me, it's just they have so many different names. Honestly, I mean, the HoloViz guys, they have the panel, they have other things. So actually, there's this thread that I just copied into the chat. where Mark, who's I think works at HoloWiz, did an example of using IPyVisu within their framework. I'm not entirely sure because I have to tell you that I'm not the technical founder here. So I'm not entirely clear about what they do, but it seems that we work nicely with their panel thingy. I'm not sure if what you just said is any way different than this, or
Hey, it's great that Mark is on it. Mark is a really good like promoter for HoloView. So if he's playing around with this stuff, he's gonna build some things with it. So you're in the right place.
great. Thanks, Tony.
Yeah,
Do you
that
maybe
was.
have some more questions, Isabella?
I was gonna check that anyone else did. I do, but I also know when we're running, watching the time that I can have
Yeah,
a
sure.
longer conversation because that was really awesome. So I'm gonna give
Thank you.
people a few seconds to say more. But oh, we have one more question. Yeah, Tony.
Yeah, does this work in lab or just classic? It should be working in lab. We are double checking it these days, whether we have all the functionalities. If you run into anything, just give us a shout out. We are actually, as I said, very approachable. I was thinking like maybe a question from my side. Would it be okay to open a separate like thread in the discourse forum about IPyVisu and IPyVisu stories? So any suggestions and questions and issues that you might run into would be very welcome here there, if that's okay for you.
Yeah, that's absolutely okay. I think we have, in fact, a lot of things on the discourse that are like, oh, I want to, here's my point of contact for this project.
Okay,
Um,
good. Thanks.
yeah. No, that's I don't know. I'm excited for this at least. This is really interesting.
Thank you.
Although
Thank
I have a
you. I really
bajillion
appreciate it.
accessibility questions, just so you know. That's why I was like, I'm stopping myself here because that is a hard problem. Just to say
Yes.
for you, that is not just you. You were not the only one who might be running into territory less spent here. I'm going to send you one link though, just so you have a point of reference. I'm going to send you Chartability,
Thank you.
which is, yeah.
Well, I'm going to send a second link, which
Okay.
is close to that, which is Apple's design group just released some guidelines on charting data yesterday. That seems to be pretty nice and influenced by some of the work that Isabella's going to.
I was going to
Sure.
say, I'm pretty sure there's some overlap on the team writing those. Yes.
Significant, yeah. But these are good
yes.
resources.
Because it is a really
Yeah.
hard problem, but I think that there is actually potential for this to be, kind of an accessibility boon in cases of, right, like cognitive accessibility, but it's going to give us some challenges in other places. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I mean, we are like this co-founder of mine who came up with the original concept of Visu. He's not colorblind, but he has issues with colors. So we are all. I mean, I know it's not the same. There are different levels of accessibility challenges, but because we have this sort of personal approach to this that we do want to think it's really just a matter of resources on our side. And then I can refer back to the early stage startup thing that I mentioned before.
No, yeah, that's why I just wanted to link it. I know personally from the case in other projects that it's not a small task. It was not meant to be a call out. Sorry.
But I think in some way, this actually is an accessibility tool for people who would consider themselves abled. Because most often when we're observing color, we really observe the changes in the color. And the fact that y'all are bringing this change of color in between the graphs and somebody's eye can follow it, I think it creates new pathways for better cognition, and also new pathways for obfuscation. But in some way or another, like this connection of color through the story as things are moving, and that continuity is going to be a really it's a really old design concept. And like you guys are like sort of rediscovering some old ideas and making them new again, which is pretty cool.
Thanks. I mean, thank you. I didn't really know what to expect from this call, but I'm so happy that you appreciate what we do so much. And then, yeah, thanks again. And if you have the time to again, to just play with it and let us know how to improve, that would be absolutely awesome. And if any of you want to continue chatting, here's the link to join our Slack, and this is my email address. So just reach out to me if you have any further questions, comments, anything.
Can I ask, are these things that you want stored after this call in the notes, or just leave them in the chat?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Please.
And thank you so
So,
much.
public.
Belated welcome to the, I think it was in chat when you were talking, but yeah, I'm really happy that you decided to join. So
Thank you. I really feel welcome. Thank you.
Final call for questions on this now, though definitely not the final call for IPyVizu questions in general.
Have you presented this at a conference yet?
Yes, I was at EuroPython and I was at PyData Lithuania, and I'm also invited to present this at PyData New York this November.
How do the rounds of applause feel when you show this stuff?
Thanks.
Hell yeah.
So I'll see you there then.
That's good for me then. If people don't have more questions, I can open it up. I know at the beginning there was some mention of, do we have time for other questions? That doesn't still have to be the case, but I'm happy to spend some time on that if people want.
Oh yeah, so hey guys, I'm Uzi, and I've been using Jupyter Lab, let me put it that way, for a long time, inside a big group. And lately I was like, I got relocated to Singapore and figured there are a lot of firms here trying to adopt Jupyter Lab into their internal data science tool. And I was wondering, first question, do we have a more or less a Jupyter community branch in like Asia region or APAC region?
Do you mean in the sense of like having a call like this, or do you mean more like broadly, like do we have a community?
Yeah, do we have a community-ish? Because I was thinking if we could be setting up a like APAC region community for Jupyter Lab and help the enterprise to adopt Jupyter Lab better into their ecosystem.
I think you're probably going to find some more luck in the PyData route. Like a lot of Jupyter people are PyData people. Yeah, I'll send you. So PyData, so we've got a couple organizations that help support our open source communities. Two of them are PyData and NumFocus. So PyData is a global community of meetups around like the scientific Python data science space. There's over 100 different meetup communities. So we're more likely to find Jupyter users, business users, industry users at PyData events. There have been a few small communities that have tried to be Jupyter specific, but I don't think any of them have caught on in a sustainable way.
But what I would say, we may not be running into them. They like that. Actually, I would say that we may just have a kind of awareness gap there. I don't know. Tony usually is very aware of all the happenings, but I would say in the past, when I've tried to schedule events to be more inclusive with that time zone, at the very least, I've never found the groups that are there, if they're there. That doesn't mean they're not. It just means I feel like we haven't connected across that yet, which is honestly pretty possible that they exist and we just haven't overlapped at this point. Oh, I think Darian has, Go on, sorry.
One thing is that we do a set of calls for proposals to do community workshops that we fund as a project. And I think you would find a very receptive audience to try to fund a workshop and try to kickstart a group that does meet regularly. And also, if we can find ways of, so we have a lot of regular calls. You've probably seen the Jupyter community calendar. In addition to this monthly call, we have lots of projects that have weekly calls or bi-weekly calls. And if you find that there are some of those calls you're interested in and you're basically locked out for time reasons, I can't speak for every project, but I do know the ones that I'm involved in would all really strongly consider alternating the times and figuring out how to be accommodating. It's just because we haven't had points of contact that we already know, it's been hard to sort of seed that ground. But if we knew that, oh, doing this enables a group of people to come, we would really welcome that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so as you mentioned the call for proposals, I was actually reading through it and trying to submit my proposal, and says the Google form says it has been closed already, which is like I'm a bit confused and don't know who I should be contacting with.
No, that it's true. We do this, I think, once a year, basically, and we fund a bunch of projects, and we've probably done this round of funding. So the next round, I don't exactly know when it is, but I imagine probably will start up again in a few months when the new year arrives.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and these are not meant to be like, this isn't meant to be a replacement for, like, say, PyData, like Tony said. This is more like if you have a targeted thing that you want to do, or you want to kickstart some project, or you want to like have a sprint for something, or, you know, like they're meant to be like sort of focused workshops. And we usually get funding from a couple of longtime corporate contributors to the project who will just say, we're allocating these funds to you to do community-based events like that. And so yeah, so the next time it comes, we'll definitely announce it on this call and in lots of other channels like our blog, etc. But beyond that, before that happens, I'm saying, like, if, for example, you're interested in Jupyter Lab, or if, for example, you're interested in Jupyter Server, we will definitely be open to scheduling at least some of those calls to be at friendlier times.
Gotcha. So yeah, so that's one thing. The other thing is, like, I wonder if there would be any sort of way for me to get to know, like, how Jupyter Lab is like deeply integrated with enterprise IT infrastructures ish, because I do know a good amount of them back in Asia, but I would definitely be more interested in how people are like leveraging that in North America or in Europe. Do you think there is any way we could do that?
I'm not sure I understand. Could you rephrase that a bit?
Yeah, so basically, I wonder if there's any way for people to like know how Jupyter Lab has been integrated with enterprise infrastructure deeply. Like talking about like how do you access to your like production data with the Jupyter Lab, how to protect the environment safety, stuff like that.
Are you asking, or can I check like case studies or tutorials? Like, are you looking for examples, or do you want?
I think I'm looking for like case studies right now, because as also at the same time, I do see a good amount of my friends are looking for how to like integrate Jupyter Lab into their internal tool chains. Right.
So a lot of that is happens at sort of a different scope than this meeting. I think you'll have some good luck looking at the Jupyter Hub community, and you'll find a lot of different use cases and integrations of multi-user systems, kind of at the Jupyter Hub level. And they also have a community meeting that's probably going to be more Asia Pacific friendly. So yeah, that would be a suggestion I'd make.
Thank you. Do you know how, is there any like a link, is there any like URL could be linking me to that site ish? Or it's just going to be
there's
Jupyter,
I think Jupyter Hub / Team Compass on GitHub might do the, I'm not totally sure.
Gotcha.
What are you looking for, Tony?
Something to point to Jupyter Hub. Because Jupyter Hub is like really at the systems level, and like, you know, I think Netflix had an article a while ago that was good about how they integrated some of their data. There's some case studies here and there, but it seems mostly Jupyter Hub hooks everybody in.
Gotcha. So Jupyter Hub is pretty much like the repo right now. People are like putting stuff together to see how things are getting architected at a multi-user level, right?
I don't think it's maybe exclusively, but it's definitely the hub for it. Haha.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I was, because like when I was architecting around it, I was thinking another way of doing it, but thanks for the redirection. Yeah.
Can I also add, circling back to kind of your first question, with this community call in particular, I've tried to kind of rotate sometimes. It's a little hard as a single host to dodge other meetings that I have. And when I'm a good host, for example, I'm not a great host at 1 a.m., which is like, I know an alternate time that a lot of people, 1 a.m. my time, I should say, is like a good time for people with this. I've asked for people, like if people want to host before or co-host or anything, that is open. So I'm also just opening that up to you. If you're interested in having similar like cross community sharing calls, we can talk more, or you can come to I think I shared the repo. If not, that's fine too. I just want you to know this is not something that is like, I don't know, controlled by someone. Like if we're interested in having other community calls, rotating times for this too, I would be very happy to do that, figure it out.
Yeah, thanks. That's pretty much like all questions I have right now.
Thank you so much for asking them. Those are great questions. I actually love when people come to this call with questions. We usually have really unusual discussions. Yeah. Anyone else have something they want to add? I know we are over time. People can go whenever. I just want to I actually have to go, but I want to make sure nobody's being cut off. Cool. Thank you so much all for your time today. I hope to see some of you, if not all of you, next month. End of October, we will be here again. So thank you for another great month of calls, and good luck with everything in the meantime. See ya.